Welcome back. Today we'll be looking at Football Tactics and Glory World, the sequel to Creo Team's critically acclaimed Football Tactics and Glory. They've graciously given us the opportunity and permission to go through a beta build of the game, where we can actually share some of the upcoming features and kind of talk about the ideas behind their design and overall implementation. Of course, since it's a beta, things are subject to change. You may also see bugs and unintended side effects, but that is a risk that you take with a build like this. But I think we'll be able to get a lot of good information out there, and we'll be able to keep people informed as to what's coming up. So let's get into it. If you're familiar with Football Tactics and Glory, then you know that this game relies heavily on the campaign, the career mode, where you take yourself as a coach and you build up your reputation across various years of service. Football Tactics and Glory World is no different, so we'll be following along a campaign as we test various aspects of the game. So for Scotland, we're taking advantage of their bonus, which is called Planning Ahead. And this actually gives you a massive bonus to passing if you manage to maintain possession of the ball throughout the opponent's turn. One of the more esoteric bonuses, but definitely powerful in its own right. I've actually found good use for it so far. For this campaign in particular, we're actually focused on a specific set of goals. Our goal is to promote to the first league in 4 years. We've completed the first year recently, where we just managed to avoid relegation while continuing to build up our team's strength. For this upcoming year, I'm going to be focusing on building up the team even further. It is the second year, and we are fairly weak for the second league. So we're going to need to get younger players online, more gifted players up and running in our matches, and we'll need to start worrying about older players aging out of the game. So we're going to have a lot of matches where we're just focused on growth and development. We're not really going to be focused on big wins or high placements. It's really just going to be avoiding relegation and growing. So you can see that we're actually starting to benefit from some of our actions last season. New to this game will be the idea of loans and loan transfers, where for a 6-month period, you can send your players to opposing teams or receive players from opposing teams to train them up, and they'll receive specialization points, experience, and whatnot. And generally, you'll be rewarded with glory for your efforts. So we have a player here where we're receiving a reward of glory because we've used him fairly often. The team is thankful, and that will also factor into future opportunities when it comes to loan players. As you'd expect, we do have the opportunity to receive trade offers for some of our best players. Generally, when it comes to renewing contracts, I will actually check the transfer market first to see what options are available. You can see this year we have quite a few options from various nations. That's going to be very useful because, again, Football Tactics and Glory World puts a big emphasis on nationality and footballing cultures. A lot of the players that we see on the transfer market are going to provide native bonuses that other players won't have. For example, we have players from Belgium who have their own bonus. We have some players from Germany. We have players from England and various other countries. All of those players will provide a specific bonus unique to their nation, and it will allow us to build our team in various ways. After we've looked at the transfer market, we'll need to get back to extending the contracts of our players. Generally, I like to extend contracts by 1 year for any player who's not at risk of retirement. That's because it's relatively cheap. It allows you to extend the contract of multiple key players at once, and that kind of saves you a bit of money for any transfer market opportunities you'd like to take. Of course, you need to weigh the cost of extending a contract versus simply the reward of selling a player. Sometimes you won't always get the best reward for a sale, but it can be worthwhile just to take advantage of a player's current interest and just cull out the team list a little bit. Also new to this game is the concept of scouting. Getting information about an upcoming team, their players, who their star players are, the greatest threats, and so on. In the previous game, you would just get information on everything. Now you are required to build up your scouting infrastructure. Get higher level scouts, which will give you information on higher level players. Without that, you'll commonly fall into situations where you'll be facing a strong team with threats that you're unaware of. And since you don't know what those threats bring to the table, it will be more difficult to plan against them. So generally, that's also a nice little reward for upgrading that infrastructure. You still get a few other bonuses when it comes to the transfer market. You also have the ability to hire scouts for a specific period of time. If you haven't invested enough to see, for example, 3-star players, you can hire scouts for a period of time, and that will give you information in matches. Of course, there's a cost to that. It's temporary. As you can see in my current situation, I actually don't have enough money to hire a 2-star scout, but I'm actually benefiting from the investment I've made in my scouting infrastructure because I have level 1 scouts. So I'm able to see giftedness level 1 players and giftedness level 0, basically anything below the level of my scouts. Of course, that still puts me at a disadvantage because, as you can see, for this upcoming match, they have quite a few players that are higher than a giftedness level 1 or a 1-star. So there are going to be a lot of players on the field that I can't plan for as I'd like. You can see there are 2 forwards at the front who are unknowns. They're going to be threats and I can't really plan for them here. There's also going to be a midfielder and 3 defenders. So that's quite a few players that I don't have information on. And again, I don't have the money to actually hire scouts for this purpose. You do have the ability to analyze the opponent for a one-time fee for 1 match. So if I wanted to spend 14 glory, I could analyze this team and then it would give me all of the information. But again, that is something that you're going to have to keep in mind when you're playing this game. Before we actually begin the match, we'll be focusing on loaning out a few of our players. So we're going to send 2 players on loan. These are going to be McAllister and McPhee, because I don't think I'll be able to utilize them effectively myself, which means they'll be on the bench, they won't really be gaining experience or specialization points, and as a result, they won't grow. So in this case, I'm going to send them to the Amateur League. And that's because they're very strong players for that league, so the teams that accept them will most likely use them. And that way they'll get experience, they'll get specialization points, and so on. Now, of course, sending them to a lower league is going to cost more glory, because essentially you're convincing the player to go. If I sent them to a second league team, they believe that's on their level, it takes less glory to convince them, but they're less likely to be used because stronger teams don't necessarily need support. If I send them to a lower league, they're more likely to be utilized, they're more likely to gain experience and specialization points, but it's going to take more to convince them. They believe it's below their level. But we're going to put in that investment, expecting them to be used, and then we'll see how things look over the course of this 6-month period. Of course, since we're focused on building up our team's strength, we'll be fielding younger players with more potential than others on the roster. And that will kind of lead to situations where we have more effective players on the bench. For example, Hammerich will be on the bench, even though he's my best defender. We'll have Allardyce on the bench as well, even though he's a very strong wing midfielder. And they'll definitely come on later in the game as the match flow dictates, but we're really looking to get those younger players, those players with greater potential up and running. So guys like McNee, Hansen, Gilmore, those are all players that we want to train up. We're also going to put Donahue out there because he's also a player with great potential, and he's our most effective attacker at this point. Again, we're using a campaign option that hides the formation, so we won't be able to see what the opponent is fielding until the game starts. I like this a lot because I have a lot of experience in this game, and it's gotten to the point where I can basically win the game on this screen based on how I counter the opponent. So I like the idea of hiding information from the player. The opposing coach gets a little bit of an advantage. As you know, they can't adapt to your formation the way that you can to theirs before a game. So it also feels like you're evening the playing field somewhat. So all I know right now is that they have a 5-2-3 formation. They have a couple of powerful players whose details I can't see because of my scouting infrastructure and my lack of agents. I'm just going to have to prep for that. I'm also aiming for more of a growth-minded game, so I'm going to have a bit of a different defense. I'm playing more of a traditional T defense in the back, 2 CDs on the wings, and 2 defenders in the middle to defend against shots. Not my most powerful players, but again, these are 2 defenders that I'm looking to train up for the future, so they're the ones we'll be using. So we're going to go ahead and get started with the game proper and see how it goes. Now once the game has begun, we can actually see what the opponent is fielding. We also have access to the information for all of their players. So those 5 or so players that were hidden during our planning phase can now easily be seen. We can see that they do indeed have 2-star players across the board. They have very threatening players at the front, they have very strong defenders at the back, and they have a very solid midfielder as well. So it's going to be a tough game, but I think we can pull off a very productive training session. I definitely think training up the team early in this case is the way to go. Take a few losses at the beginning, get your gifted players up and running as soon as possible, and then they'll be able to dig you back out of whatever hole you fall into. That's going to be our plan this season. That's going to be our plan for these first couple of games. And we're hoping that pays off. As you know, this game is very fluid. Anything can happen. But you definitely have to make the attempt. And here we go. Nairn FC versus Metal FC. Nairn's going to start with the ball. It looks like McNee's going to be cut off on the left-hand side. When it comes to the flanking run, Donahue's going to be cut off as well. So he's going to play it over to Hansen. Hansen has 27 control. He has the opportunity to hold it for the next turn and make a play. Give Donahue the ball and potentially nutmeg through the flank. Of course, McKinnon does have pretty high defense for forward, so he's going to have a pretty good chance at winning the ball. There's going to be a CM that presses for free. McKinnon's actually going to win the ball, and he's going to play it forward to McKay, who's a universal forward. He's going to have 46 control. Going to be pretty tough for the defensive line to win the ball here. It looks like McDowell's going to take the opportunity. He does have higher defense, so he's going to take the ball. He also has long pass, so he does have the chance to play it forward to the opponent's half. Plays it to Gilmore, who's a player that's currently in training. He's really just there to get into an amateur class more quickly. So he'll keep possession of the ball. He'll get a bit of specialization points, and Donahue will move into the flank, getting ready for that nutmeg later on. McKinnon's still back there, still has 35 defense. Going to be very tough to keep the ball from him. They're going to play it into the box to the sweeper, which gives the offense an opportunity to press. But the front line doesn't really have high defense in this situation. So McGrace is just going to get into position to potentially cut off a forward pass. We're going to have a bit of repositioning on the right-hand side. It's going to force the sweeper to lob the ball forward. Other midfielder is going to grab it. He's going to use a layoff pass. And Clark is actually going to stop it. Clark, another trainee. Giftedness level 2 player, so he's pretty good at stopping plays up front like that, but his passing's not the best. In this situation, they would want to get the ball to Donahue up there on the left, and then he can potentially make that play through the wing defender and potentially get a nutmeg off. So it looks like Gilmore might try to lob it. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, so they're going to have to take possession right here. Looks like Hansen's going to fall back. They're going to leave the ball at the front, and they're just going to reset the midfield. Fullback's going to get it. He's going to use layoff pass to place it forward, and they're going to take the shot from the midfield. And that's going to end the first half. Of course, now's the chance to take a look at some of the specialization and experience gained. It's also an opportunity to make changes to the formation and possibly substitute in some better players. Again, the whole point of this match is to get players up to speed as quickly as possible. You get the younger players firing a bit better to start replacing the older players who are going to age out of the game and who do not have as much potential. There's going to be a few shifts. We're going to move McGrath back down to the DM spot now that we're defending against this kickoff. Also going to make a few adjustments in the midfield. Still aiming to get these players up to speed as quickly as possible, so training's still going to be a big part of the game. And then we'll go ahead and start the second half. So second half begins. Methyl FC starts with the pass. McGrath actually manages to take it on the DM spot, which is great. And that's going to give Nairn FC the advantage that prevents Methyl from striking immediately. Of course, McKinnon has very high control. As a universal forward, he does get plus 30% natively, and he already had high control to begin with, so it's going to be pretty tough to win the ball. You're going to see they're going to maintain possession right there. Gilmore is going to pass to McKay, who's going to get a shot on the side. McKay has very good accuracy, uses precision shot and gets it through. And they manage to score, which is all well and good. Again, this game is really focused on training. Training up those defenders who tried to stop the shot, training up these unknown players and amateurs who are younger but have much better potential than the other older players. For example, Hanson's a giftedness level 2 player, Gilmore is also giftedness level 2, Clark back there is giftedness level 2 as well. We're going to make some adjustments, moving McNee forward to take advantage of that two-towel movement that universal midfielders get by default. That will allow him to run into the box and block off the sweeper, which will then give Donahue an opportunity to shoot uncontested if he can beat the fullback on the right-hand side. Also bringing in Allardyce, an older player, taking Hansen out for a little bit, put a bit more effective players on the field, just to kind of give us an opportunity to potentially come back. And we'll be playing it from here. Gilmore is going to pass to Allardyce. Allardyce has a few opportunities. McNee's going to run into the box and they're going to prepare for the next play. Of course, the fullback's going to come forward and try to win it. Allardyce did manage to keep the ball. 47 control is pretty good in this position. And now we have a few opportunities here. Since Allardyce is Scottish, he does get planning ahead, so he gets the big boost to passing right here. So 85 versus 52 is more than good enough. Of course, there's a potential for the fullback to win the ball if Allardyce doesn't roll well enough. He gets it through at 72. Donahue gets the ball. He now has an opportunity to take a shot on goal. McNee is blocking that towel, where the sweeper could potentially stop a shot. So Donahue could take on an uncontested shot if he wanted to. It looks like Donahue's going to run to the flank. He's going to try to get nutmeg off, which will boost his accuracy if he gets it off. Unfortunately, it fails. Bit of a gamble, but that would have given him a much better chance of actually scoring a goal. Looks like Matt Lee is going to shoot directly on goal, but goalkeeper's going to stop it. And then McDowell does have... Let's see, he's going to give it to that defender who has long pass, but there's really nothing else that they can do. They can try to lob it into the box and hit the goalkeeper. That happens, but the goalkeeper keeps the ball in play. There's always the opportunity for the goalkeeper to knock it out of bounds for a corner kick. That would have been a last-ditch effort, and it's a 1-0 loss. Solid game that did what it needed to do. You can see Hansen and Gilmore have gotten experience points, and we've also gotten quite a bit of specialization for our younger players as well. So 1-0 defeat at this stage isn't terrible. Again, the whole purpose of these early matches is to get those younger players up to speed, so we can start replacing some of the less gifted older players. And for the second year, we're still kind of focused on avoiding relegation as opposed to placing big. So all in all, a good result, aiming for what our overall purpose is as opposed to just looking for big wins or points. And that's going to do it for now. This is match number 1 of the season. In the next video, we'll go over match number 2. We'll look at some of the managerial decisions that we need to make before the match begins, and then we'll go over the match itself, see how things play out.